Hello, this is Sizwe Podcast. My name is Patricia. Today we have a guest, and the guest name is Yvonne Skefio. Yvonne, welcome to our studio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. My name is Agnes. If you remember, some time ago, before the year end, we met with Yvonne, and she works with Canada Immigration. She owns her own business called Canada Immigration and Beyond. Those of you who have watched our first video, we are privileged to have her in our studios today. And like we always do, we want to know more about her and what she does. Welcome again, Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Agnes.
Who are you? I like asking those questions.
Okay, so I will talk a little bit about myself. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Yvonne Skefio, as Patricia said. I've been in Canada for a couple of years. I currently own Canada Immigration and Beyond. It is an immigration consultancy business. I've been in operation for about 7 years now.
Awesome.
And before I opened this business, I also worked with the provincial program in Alberta for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. Before that, I worked at the Canadian Embassy in Ghana before coming here. Mm-hmm. So I've had extensive experience in immigration, and I'm very happy to share the information I have, and I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you. Patricia.
And Yvonne, we have a lot of immigration programs in Canada. Mm-hmm. Can you mention to us some of the few programs that are there for people to take advantage of?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that question, Patricia. There are many programs for to come into Canada or to migrate to enter Canada. There are provincial programs and there are federal programs. Mm-hmm. Each province has its own immigration program in Canada. So if you're going to a specific province in Canada, there's a program for that. Oh. As well, there are federal programs specific for everybody. So programs such as the Federal Skilled Worker, mm-hmm. the Canadian Experienced Class, the Federal Skilled Trades programs, and many other programs. But what you find is that some of them are specific to certain countries only. So not for generally everybody, but specific countries as well.
Oh,
wow. That's right.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. If you just join us, this is Sizwe Podcast. Today we are here with Yvonne. If you are an immigrant like me, a day will not pass that a family member will not call you and ask you, I want to come to Canada. How can I come? What are some of the programs? Or they have heard about something and then they bring it to you. Sometimes we don't have all the answers. And if you are one of those people like me, subscribe to our channel. The reason is that we've had Yvonne here the first time. She spoke about the program of coming to Canada as a student, and she dealt with it exhaustively. But today, we are going beyond that. But if you have a specific question for her, please send us an email. The email will be under this podcast. If you see it, just send it to us, and we'll bring her. That will be the only reason why we can ask her to come once every month. After all, we are not paying for that. Thank you, Yvonne. So you touch about the overarching programs that are there in the province, and then you said there are different ones depending on which province that you are going to. Patricia and I today, we want you to deal so much with something that has become like influx. And if I'm saying it's like, I don't know whether it was the COVID, but it looks like now a floodgate has opened in the immigration program that everybody who has a passport and applies and have a good reason to come get a visitor's visa. Mm-hmm. And then when they are coming, they take the phone and they call you and they say like, I heard this program. When I get to Canada, I can change my visitor's visa into a work permit. Am I lying? Am I the only person who is hearing this information? Patricia,
Not at all.
Yeah.
How many people are coming from your country?
We have a lot of people.
Hey.
And now we have a challenge. How do we change that to get them to be employees? Is it possible? How difficult is it? What
Is
are the
that-
challenges?
So honestly, there have been innumerous calls, right?
Okay.
Numerous calls that I have received from people who have come through the same route as visitors.
Yes.
They get here and they are telling me, oh, the agent that I worked with back, whichever country, it doesn't even matter which country,
Yes.
said when I come here, I can change to a worker status. Can you help me do that? And my answer almost always is, I cannot help you to find a job, because ultimately that is what you need to do. So to be able to work in Canada, it's not as easy as just getting a job offer.
Yes.
It takes much more than that.
And I think, Yvonne, I want to take you back. I came here with a work permit, so I know the process. So now I am a visitor and I want to get a work permit. Can you walk us through?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
So I can walk you through in terms of what you need to do to be able to change that status.
Okay.
It is possible, but it is a process. And it's the same process whether you are outside the country or you are here as a visitor. It's
So when the
same process.
agent said, oh, when you get the visitor's visa and you get to Canada, you can change it. So that doesn't change. It doesn't matter whether you are here or you are there. It is the same process that you are going to go through. Guys, if you just join us, this is Sizwe Podcast. And I have heard, and my family members kept calling me, asking me about how to change visitors' visa into work permit when they get to Canada. We don't have the answers, but we have the expert here. This is Yvonne Sakifio. She owns her own immigration business. She got the answers. We are all ears.
So thank you for that, Agnes. So as I was saying, when you come to Canada as a visitor, it's great in the sense that at least you are here. If you, as you're looking for a job, the employer can meet you face to face.
Yes.
That is probably the only advantage
yes.
in being here as a visitor, right?
Okay.
Coming here, if it's a family member you have here already, there's all that other aspect of being a visitor in Canada. But when it comes to looking for a job, you have to find a job with an employer who is willing to hire you and go through what is called the labor market impact assessment process, which is, a lot of people have heard it called the LMIA.
I was going to ask you. That's why I'm writing
And
it.
you said who is willing?
LMIA.
How many
Yes.
employers are willing to do that?
So that's a very loaded question, Patricia. So what happens is the government charges employers $1,000 to apply for this LMIA. There's no guarantee they will be approved.
So that you work to an employer, and the employer who want to hire you and want to give you this LMIA, the government is charging that employer.
Yes.
Am I willing to do that?
That's
and
correct.
is it going to go through? It's the question that's at the back of the employer's mind, which we don't know.
And
Wow.
other than the cost of it, the process is tedious. So the process entails things like the employer advertising for 30 days before they can even submit an application. They have to explain to the Canadian government why they are hiring a foreign worker and
When
they're
there's
not
a-
hiring a Canadian. Right?
Yes.
That is the crux of the matter, where the whole LMIA process, that is what it's about. To be able to establish that you've looked for a Canadian, you cannot get a Canadian for that job, so you are hiring a foreign worker.
Oh.
And you have to prove that by advertising,
For 30
by
days.
showing minimum. And you have to continue to advertise for the entire time it is being processed.
Wow.
Right? So that is something that there's a cost to it other than the $1,000. And employers tend to think, or let me not say, that employers, this is what they're thinking. But from my experience, it's been like, I don't know this person, one.
Yes.
I don't know their background. They're saying they have this experience, but they don't know, right?
Yes.
Canadian employers really don't have a lot of exposure to foreign markets,
Yes.
unfortunately.
So they want
So
someone
they
with a
want-
Canadian experience. What they normally
Exactly.
ask you, what's your Canadian experience?
Exactly. So they do hire, some do hire foreign workers, but it takes a lot for them to be comfortable to do so.
It's true.
Right? So then the first point as a visitor is to find that employer willing to take a chance on you, right?
Yes.
And go through that process.
And then they put the documentation in to apply for you for the LMIA.
LMIA, exactly.
And from that, are you employed or can you?
No. Not even close.
How
Not
many
even
employers
close.
are willing to do that? Do they have to look for an immigration consultant? What do they have to do?
So I'll answer Agnes's question first. So when it comes to the LMIA, once they have put in the LMIA application, if everything is accepted, they pay the fee. If it's approved, it is that approval that they will use for the worker to apply for a work permit.
Okay.
So until that worker is approved the work permit, they cannot work for that employer. So it's not a simple process. It's not an easy process. It's possible, but this is what it entails, right? So finding an employer is the biggest thing in terms of the steps to do. Now, Patricia, you asked about whether the employer needs a consultant to do that
like
work.
you, yes.
So I would say yes.
Okay.
And this is why. A lot of employers they cannot even understand, and Patricia can attest, they cannot even understand the amount of detail it takes to be able to do that application.
The paperwork and the questions that the answers. It's like, Patricia, it's like when we are applying for funding and they said you need to look at the guidelines and the requirements. So if you are somebody who have never applied for that funding, you just take a paper and you fill, and then it comes back and like, oh, check the fine lines. So it's the same thing. I'm employer. I have agreed to employ this person, but the documentation, the details of answers that I have to give to convince the government that I can employ, even for the advertising example. Where am I going to advertise it, and for how long, and what are some of the languages that I have to? So they also, I thought it's only the person who is looking to change the visitor's visa that needs a consultant and paying for.
So it's honestly, I would advise if an employer is interested, they should hire a consultant, because
and look no further. Yvonne is here.
So absolutely, I do LMIA. So if it's something you're interested in, you can definitely contact me. The biggest thing with LMIAs is the advertising. So there's very specific instructions on where you can advertise, for how long you can advertise, how many places you need to, different types of places you need to advertise to.
And copy it and add it to their application.
And then there's that whole situation of, now that you've advertised, doesn't mean after the 30 days you stop advertising. No. You have to continue to advertise until your application is done processing.
Guys, if you just joined us, this is Sizwe Podcast. We are talking to Yvonne Sakifio. Yvonne owns her own immigration business, and she deals all matters immigration, federal, provincial, student visa. Today, Patricia and I brought Yvonne here because there has been an influx of visitors visa from all the parts of the world. I always say maybe because the COVID ended and the floodgate has opened, but when our relation and their families get here, they want to change their visitors visa to work permits. And that's the process Yvonne is going through. And if you have an answer, if you have questions, for us to bring Yvonne here next week or next month, please email us. The email is on this video, and we will get all the questions to her. So the next time she comes, it will be question and answer, question and answer, question and answer.
Absolutely.
What other commitments employer have to do besides the application? Just say the application is done, now you have the employer, the employee.
Okay. So the employer has to commit to pay the employee what they said in the contract that was used for the LMIA.
Okay.
So the employer has to be able to make that payment on a regular basis. If they said they're offering accommodation, they have to offer accommodation.
Yes.
They have no right to abuse the worker in any way because there are rules in Canada that protects workers.
Yeah.
So other than the employer making sure that they are complying with those rules, it's also good for the worker to also know their rights and responsibilities, right? So the employer not only has to offer the job, but they're responsible for that employee in terms of what they said they would do. Right, when they applied.
So
depending on how long they offered the job for.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes they'll offer it for a year, maybe they'll offer it for 2 years at a time, right? And then they will renew it. So if the employer has said, I'm hiring you for 2 years, then they are responsible for hiring the employer, the worker for 2 years.
Yes.
Now, if for any reason something goes wrong and let's say the employer goes bankrupt, right? And they have to close down the business. That employee can find another employer.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yes.
So the employer doesn't have the control to send the employee back to their home country. No.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, you can apply.
There's not that control over the worker in that sense.
Oh, okay.
Right? The worker can find another employer, but they have to go through
They'll
the same
go through the
LMIA
same thing.
process.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Same thing.
Because you can't, for me, like I told you, I came here with that. So my first 2 years, it was specific. And then after that, I had the opportunity to apply for an open work permit, which allows me to work for another employer if I wanted. Yes. Awesome. So now we are talking about the employer. You've just touched a little bit about the employee's responsibility. What are some of the things that we have to do when we are looking into changing our visa into a work permit as an employee?
The biggest thing, as I said before, find an employer willing to go through the LMIA process
With you.
There's no other substantial way for you to be able to work in Canada. Like I said, there are some other programs where it's specific to certain countries, right? And one of them is it allows workers to come and work here without the LMIA process. But you find that is not even seasonal. There's the seasonal ones where a lot of people from either Mexico come and work in the farms and of that over the summer.
Yeah.
There's that process. But once again, it's for certain countries.
Oh, okay.
Right? There's also a process or a program where Canada has agreements with certain countries where their young people can come to Canada because Canadian young people can go to their countries.
Okay.
Right?
Exchange
So it's a kind of an exchange program, right? So for those ones, they don't need the LMIA.
Okay.
But they have to get approved in their home country
before they arrive.
Right? Okay. So those are some of the programs that they can use to come in here other than the LMIA part of things. But in terms of the LMIA, the employer, like I said, I think I missed your question.
No, I mean, you've talked much about the employer's commitment into the process of getting all of this. If I am a new employee, what are my responsibilities? What are some of the things I should do? And some of the things I need to know in the process of getting the work permit.
So one of the biggest things I mentioned, or we've been talking about, is to find that employer who can do the LMIA for you. Now, I've heard rumors about people who are asked to pay exorbitant amounts of money.
Yes, that is why I want to know more.
To the employer, exactly, to the employer. But you have to know that the LMIA process in Canada is an employer process. Right?
How many of you know that?
The employer is responsible for the cost associated with the LMIA.
So that means that you are not supposed to pay any
the
money
employer.
that.
It's illegal.
It's illegal to pay.
It's actually illegal that if it's found out, you will be in trouble. The employer will be in trouble. Wow. Although I know from rumors that people do it.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think I have a 8-year visitor's visa. I am eager to turn it into getting a work permit, and definitely some people think the more you pay somebody who promised to employ you may be the fastest way, but in Canada, it's illegal.
Yes.
It's illegal. If you just join us, this is Sizwe Podcast. We are talking to Yvonne Sakifio. And if you have your questions about immigration, about any of the programs that you have heard, that you can come through it to Canada, please send your questions. And next month when Yvonne is here, those are the questions we are going to tackle. Patricia.
And Yvonne, we have other programs like the Skilled Workers Program. Can you tell us more about that one?
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that there are a few programs that you can use to migrate into Canada. The Federal Skilled Worker Program is one of them.
Is that what they call the express entry?
Yes.
Okay.
So the express entry is actually a system, and there are programs
under the express entry. Okay.
So the express entry has the Federal Skilled Worker, the Canadian Experience Class, and the Federal Skilled Worker. Federal Skilled Trades, sorry.
So Federal Skilled Trade, the Canadian Experience Worker, and then
Federal
Federal
Skilled Worker.
So the trade, the worker, and Canadian experience. Okay, I got it.
Good. So those are the three programs under the express entry. Now, in terms of the Federal Skilled Worker, it's open to both those outside Canada and those inside Canada. So when you want to migrate, that is the major program that you would use.
Okay.
And it's a point system. So your points are based on your English language test results, your education, work experiences, funding that you have for yourself to be able to look after yourself when you come to Canada. So before you can even create a profile, right, in the express entry system to tell the Canadian government that you think you qualify,
Yes.
you have to do the English language test, and you have to get your educational credentials assessed.
Oh, by the IQAS or something.
By
like
IQAS,
yeah.
by WES, World Education Service, there's a few other ones.
Oh, okay.
So you have to do those things before you can even create a profile, right, in the system. Now, the profile is not an application. It's just an expression of interest.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So once you create your profile, you've gone through all the English language test and everything, you create your profile, it gives you a certain number of points.
You see them yourself.
You see the points yourself.
Okay.
Right? Once you submit, you will see the points. Now, every couple of weeks, the Canadian government invites certain people with a certain number of points
Okay.
to actually submit an application.
An application.
And it's only when you submit or you are invited to apply and you submit that application, can you say you have an application for permanent residence.
Wow.
Okay. Guys, if you just join us, this is Sizwe Podcast. It's getting more interesting here. As an immigrant, I know most of these programs, but I don't know into details. Yvonne Sakifio is here, and she's an immigration consultant. She owns her own business. So, you know, when she started, I was going to ask her a question. I'm like, no, if you want more, please call Yvonne, because she works for money. And then she doesn't want to give us all the details here. But yeah, if any of this program interests you, you can send us an email under this video, and she will come back and answer. And if really you want to migrate to Canada, then you are in business with her. That one she'll tell you the terms.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. Patricia, do we have any other questions? Because she's coming back.
Yeah, and do we have any specific programs for Alberta?
So I talked about the federal programs. Now let me talk a little bit about the Alberta Advantage.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Alberta
What is that?
Alberta Advantage Immigration Program. So in Canada, every province has an immigration program.
Okay.
Where they can select or put a criteria around the kind of immigrants they are looking for their province. And Alberta has one, and it's called the AAIP.
Yes, AAIP.
AAIP. Okay. Now, this program is open to those who are living in Alberta, have attended school in Alberta, and are still residing here. And there's criteria around what is needed to be able to even apply. Right? So when it comes to it, it's just figuring out whether you meet the criteria. right? There are various categories, such as the rural renewal, where employers in the rural area can hire. If you're working for such an employer, you will be able to apply to the program. There are programs, or there's a category for students who have started businesses.
Yes.
Right? There is a category for those who are working in the trucking industry in Alberta. So it's all Alberta specific.
It has nothing to do with most of these programs that I am outside Canada and I want to come. It has, but then you have to have the Alberta experience or something like that.
So yes, for the program, for you to be able to apply to the program, the majority of the program is for those who are already here.
Yes.
There's a small component where they will pick from the express entry queue.
Oh,
right?
for
those who are, so that federal skilled worker program, remember that it's open to people outside Canada and in Canada.
Inside, yeah.
So when you've created a profile, but you haven't been selected by Canada, let's say, and Alberta decides they like your profile, they want you to come to Alberta, they can send you an invitation, but you have to be in the queue.
Your name have to be.
You have to have a profile in the queue. And creating the profile entails doing the English language test.
Yes.
And getting your credentials assessed. And I find a lot of people don't even want to take that first step because they feel there's no guarantee that they'll get selected. But if you don't try even the first step, then how would the federal government pick you?
Yes.
How would any province pick you?
Pick you if they find you.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, so put your name out there. And there's a question I want to ask Yvonne, if we have a little time, about getting parents and grandparents to come to visit or to come here. That's also a whole program on itself. Yes. Can you touch a little bit on that? And next time when we bring you, we can elaborate on that.
Sure. So in terms of the parent and grandparents program, it's a sponsorship. So the child here is sponsoring their parents or their grandparents.
Okay.
It used to be years ago that everybody could sponsor their parents. They just submit the application. And those times we used to have like 7-year wait for people who were sponsoring their parents and grandparents.
Wow.
So the Canadian government changed the process where once a year or so, they will open it and invite people to express interest in sponsoring.
That is also not the application yet.
Once again.
Yes.
Right?
Wow.
And I think they give, I'm not sure what the number is right now, but once they meet that target, they shut it down.
Okay, so they know.
It can be within a day.
Okay. If in a day they are looking for 500 and they meet that number, that application, that expression of interest to bring your parents or grandparents has closed.
Yes, for the year.
And then they will send you a letter to apply. Okay.
So once they have received their number, then they will assess based on what you said in your expression of interest, basically to sponsor. And then they will require you to submit an application. They will invite you you to apply.
You to submit the application.
Exactly.
So that will not be another 7 years wait. At least they know they got their hands around the numbers that they have chosen.
Yes.
Wow.
And I'll just mention something. So recently there was an announcement that because of the COVID, things kind of slowed down a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
So what they did, or what they've announced recently, is that starting October 10th,
guys, if you are here,
all those who submitted an interest in sponsorship in 2020,
wow,
they're going to pick from that queue.
2020.
Remember, was the
And
COVID year.
2023, right?
Exactly.
There's a lot of backlog. I can imagine.
Exactly.
Wow.
So they're giving those people the opportunity. So they are going to be sending out emails to those people and telling them to apply. Which means that if you submitted an interest in 2021, 22, 23,
wow, you're still waiting.
Not this year.
Oh my God.
And Yvonne, let's talk about applying for your parent. as a visitor? How easy is that?
It's usually pretty straightforward, honestly. The biggest thing with, it's like any other visitor application, right? You're applying for your parent to come. The biggest thing with parents for visitor is that you need, there's the regular route and there's where you do the super visa. So the super visa, before they could come in, it's a visitor visa, all right, but they can come in and stay, or they could come in and stay for 2 years. And then they would leave, then they'll come back again for 2 years. They could do that for up to 10 years.
Oh, okay. That's the super visa.
That was the super visa. Now they can come in and stay for up to 5 years. Right? But after 5 years, they have to leave
and then they come
back
again.
Right?
And what does that entail on me as a child?
So for the super visa, the biggest thing you need to know is the insurance part of it. So because usually our parents are much older,
yes,
they don't want, them to be a burden on you and on the Canadian health system, right? So they ask you to buy insurance for them to cover the period that they're going to be here. So that, of course, tend to be a little expensive, right? But if you're able to do that and show that proof within your application, usually it's a straightforward situation.
That's wonderful.
So that is the super visa, and then the regular one is the regular visitor visa. So that one you don't even need to buy an insurance on them.
No, unless you're asked.
Okay.
It's always something though that I advise people to buy, whichever the process may be.
It is, yeah.
Because if your parent gets sick here and you don't have insurance, the cost is more than what you're going to pay for the upfront one.
Situation once, and it was crazy.
Very expensive. So in terms of those two, that is the basic thing you need to know about that.
Yeah. Agnes, anything else?
I am full. No. Honestly, I think I have exhausted most of the point. And like I said, if you're an immigrant like me, you are watching us from Canada, you know this. Your families back home wants to move to Canada, and they always have questions. Canada immigration and beyond. Yvonne Sakifio owns it, and she has all the answers. We are happy to have her here today. And like I said, if you have questions for us to bring her, maybe it is not about the visitor's visa changing to work permit, it is not about the super visa for your parents, and you have questions about the student visa application, which we dealt with here the first video, please send your question to Ask Patricia and I, Sizwe Podcast, and we will bring her here. 10 more questions, and she'll be fine. She knows how to answer them.
And recently I saw some of your students that just came because you helped them. So she really helps.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Yvonne, before we go, do you have anything more to add to all the grilling we have?
Yeah, I do want to mention, just because there's so many people who are here and are kind of stuck.
Yes.
So I want to put it out there that you can also consider studying, changing your status to student while you are here.
While you are here.
That is also an option. Of course, when it comes to studying, people will talk about the financial aspect, but if you can study, you can change your status to student. You can get admission to a school, you can get the study permit, change your status, or not change status. You still have the visitor visa and your passport,
but
you have a status as a student in Canada.
And that will make you work 22 to 36 hours a week when you are a student.
20 hours a week.
20 hours a week.
20 hours a week.
20 hours a week during the school year.
That's right.
And then when it is vacation, you can work full time. And then your struggle of changing your visitor's visa to work permit would be solved.
It will be solved ultimately too through the student route, because once you complete your studies, there are many more programs within Canada to get your permanent residence.
And we'll touch on that next time.
We'll touch on that next time. Absolutely. You're well welcome.
Thanks
for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Having me.